Welcome back to the Chip Shot Football Podcast today, here still on December the 9th, obviously, and we're going to get into looking at the Eagles and Carolina Panthers game. To be quite honest, I didn't think I would be talking about this game back on like Friday or Thursday when we predicted it. I said that, the Eagles, I talked about how the Carolina Panthers were playing better, how it was encouraging, but, we're talking about the Eagles here. And little did I know that the Eagles and Carolina Panthers game and the ending of it was all arguably one of the most entertaining endings to one of these games. You had this one, obviously the Rams game in the later window, but the Dolphins game went into overtime. This one was, in there with being one of the most entertaining ones because the Eagles were 12.5-point favorites going into this game, but barely made it through for their ninth win in a row to ultimately win 22-16. But the fact that the Eagles improved to 11-2 and the Panthers fall to 3-10, there was really no expectations for the Panthers in this game, but to have a chance to win like that, I think does mean a lot to them. And it also, created a lot of frustration for the Eagles because more importantly, the Eagles were able to do a lot of good things, right? But even still, there seemed to be like some tension in the atmosphere around the Eagles after the game. But in this game, in this victory, the Eagles were able to clinch a playoff spot because of the fact that they won, Detroit won, and also we saw the Cardinals and the Falcons lose. All of that happened, so the Eagles, based on all those results, ended up making and clinching a playoff spot. And on top of that, Nick Sirianni has made the playoffs in each of his 4 seasons there as the head coach, making this the 4th straight year that the Eagles have made the playoffs. They haven't had a run like that since the beginning of this century, from 2000 to 2004. It is kind of interesting, that point, just because, Sirianni, from where we started this season and people not being happy with him and his antics or his decisions or anything like that, they're 11-2 now. And they make the playoffs, and they have a super talented team. So, to kind of hold off and just peel off Sirianni a little bit, maybe not throw so much heat his way, right? Because, at the end of the day, he's getting results. So it's a lot better than, sweating out and trying to make the playoffs, right, at the other end of things. So Sirianni has been doing his job, and he's been doing it his way, which I think doesn't get talked about enough. So that was pretty noteworthy in the end. But in large part, we can talk about Sirianni, we can talk about the playmakers that they have, obviously, everywhere, but it starts and begins, I think, or it starts and ends with Saquon Barkley. Yesterday, another historic, just ridiculous performance from him. He set a new Eagles franchise record in rushing yards for a single season, surpassing LaShawn McCoy's record back in 2013 with 1,607 yards by LaShawn McCoy. Saquon Barkley broke that, and now he stands at 1,623 with a handful of games still remaining. So that's going to build up a lot more. He has Eric Dickerson's rushing record in his sights, and it looks like, based on the projections and everything like that, he could get it. So that is something to keep an eye on, obviously, outside of the wins and losses. But it was a great game overall by Saquon, but that was really where the good vibes really ended with this Eagles team, because the passing game was not really there, unlike the other games, right? Because we talk about the slow starts and everything like that, but they ultimately find a way to connect everything. Saquon gets going, then A.J. Brown gets involved, and at one point, everything is working for them. The offensive line is moving people. You don't really know how they got there, but, every single game it feels like the Eagles start slow, and then they just start, this snowball effect starts coming at you. You don't really know how to stop it. But the fact that the passing game was lacking, I think, really opened up the door here for the Panthers to make this a game. Even though they didn't win, they definitely scared a few people the way that this game was going. And in terms of the passing game, you look at Jalen Hurts, he only finished with 108 yards passing on the day. He had 2 passing touchdowns, though, and he also added 59 rushing yards to Saquon's 124. The receiving touchdowns went to Devontae Smith and Grant Calcaterra, stepping up for Dallas Goedert, who ended up being on the injured reserve for the foreseeable future. And A.J. Brown only led all receivers with 43 receiving yards. Then it was Devontae Smith with 37. Not really the outing you'd expect from two of the most talented guys and one of the best wide receiver duos in the NFL. But, that's what it was, and that's what kind of sparked some frustration afterwards that we're going to touch on. But on the other side, Bryce, was doing enough. He had 191 yards, a touchdown, and an interception that proved to be pretty critical. Chuba Hubbard had 92 rushing yards and a touchdown. Jonathan Brooks had one carry for -3 yards, and I bring him up just as an unfortunate thing because it was announced today that he did tear his ACL, which is very devastating for the young running back because it is his first year and he was dealing with a severe knee injury like that already. So the fact that he had it again is pretty upsetting. So, that's what happened to Jonathan Brooks. The news came out today. And then in the passing game, it was all about Adam Thielen. 9 receptions for 102 yards. Almost had a play there at the end, but it was broken up by Darius Slay. And this game was pretty interesting too, how it unfolded, because the Eagles failed to score on their opening drive. Same old. It's the 13th time that they failed to score on their opening drive this year. And not only that, they didn't score in the first quarter again. So Carolina led 3-0 before, in the second quarter, the Eagles finally put a touchdown on the board, and now it's 3-7. But Carolina answered right away with their own touchdown. So it was 10-7 at this point after Carolina scored. And I mentioned the interception by Bryce Young came at quite possibly one of the worst times, because it was around the 2-minute mark where C.J. Gardner-Johnson intercepted a pass from Bryce Young, so they were in positive field position from that point on, and Devontae Smith ended up scoring a touchdown to end the first half with about 14 seconds left. So instead of the Panthers leading, 10-7 or maybe like 13-7, now they're losing 10-14. And after, we get into the second half, Philadelphia actually missed a field goal, and then after that missed field goal, Carolina scored a touchdown, and then the Eagles scored a touchdown yet again. So now we're sitting at 16-21, still in favor of the Eagles. So, 16-22, not 21, 16-22, and now that's the final score of the game. So even though that is the final score of the game, the biggest scare of this game came when the Panthers were trying to mount the comeback, right? They were trying to go and score a touchdown, right, on this drive. And it was a great throw, great concept, great just play overall to get Xavier Legette opened with about like 54 seconds left. And I thought he scored. Actually, in the moment, I was watching and I saw him catch it, I thought, and, kind of just roll into the end zone. So I turned away before I realized that he actually dropped it. He dropped it in a spot where, it couldn't have been drawn up more perfectly. Not even the way he got open, the fact that he was so wide open and still that he dropped the pass was just so deflating. It was so deflating because, for a team like the Panthers to get a win like that, you would need a pass like that to obviously be caught and everything like that. So he dropped it in the end, which led to, I believe, a false start eventually during that drive, and it forced the Panthers on a 4th and 9 play to try and, convert it, obviously. And Bryce Young tried to pass it to Adam Thielen, but Darius Slay made a great play on it, and the Eagles won the game, ultimately 16-22. And we mentioned the passing game and how there was a lot of frustration. Nick Sirianni talked about it. Jalen Hurts was asked about it, and he didn't seem too happy to answer it. But A.J. Brown made a pretty direct comment, pretty honest, and they asked him what about the offense they could do better, and he just right away said passing. Passing is what we could do better. And that, gained some attention about the passing game and whether or not there should be a worry about it. And, I would say no, because, I didn't really hear the quote when it happened right after the game, but then I saw, later on, I kind of gave it a day, and then I saw the quote and everything, and I just find it hard to be worried, like legitimately worried about it. Like I'm worried maybe about the Ravens pass defense or the Bills run defense and things like that, or the Lions injuries. To say I'm worried about the Eagles passing game, I think would be an overestimation of how I really feel because they're too talented for me to be worried about them. Right, with Jalen, AJ, Devontae Smith, there's too much talent there for me to kind of be unsure of what I'm going to get from them, right? I think this was just like your typical trap game where, some teams do lose and the Eagles could have lost this game, but I thought it was just like an ugly game where maybe you took the Panthers as a non-threat and you kind of were just coasting through this game. So not to say that it excuses them, but I can kind of see why you'd get a performance like this. But I think it will be their biggest challenge, though, to get everybody the ball, right? Usually, it's always good in blowouts, right, where Saquon has like 50-yard runs and like over 130 rushing yards. Jalen Hurts gets into the end zone like twice. AJ Brown catches a huge pass down the field, and he gets a lot of yards that way. But the close games are where we're going to see, I guess, the character of this team. Are they always going to be upset when they win close games like this? Probably not, but it is interesting to bring up. And I just feel like they made it look worse by the way that they were just kind of like pretty serious about it, especially in the win. That's what was so weird about it, obviously, because you win, you clinch a playoff berth, you're expected to be happy, but AJ and Jalen Hurts were pretty serious about it, and I don't really have a problem with that either, just because, they're not satisfied. They're being honest, and it's kind of funny how when they are honest and things like that, people take it a wrong way, or they're thinking like, oh, how could they say that? But then if they aren't honest, it's still spun in a negative way. So I didn't really have a problem with it. Obviously, they're frustrated. AJ knows he's good enough to be more involved, and there was some instances where he was, open considerably, and Jalen just didn't get him the ball, which is frustrating, obviously, as a receiver. But I just think they were being honest, and the fact that they aren't satisfied is a positive thing. So I'm not really worried about their passing game or anything like that. They're going to continue to put out great performances, right? I think this one was just a odd instance where you get this trap game essentially. So I mean, it was weird, the vibes in that locker room afterwards, but I'm sure they're just gonna get over it. It was just a pretty frustrating day. Again, weird because they won the game, but regardless of that, we're gonna get into talking about Monday Night Football, but not before. In relation to Monday Night Football, Jamar Chase, he made some interesting comments about his future in one of the interviews last week leading up into their game tonight. So I wanted to bring it up. I thought it was pretty interesting to kind of talk about it. And so we're going to do that right after this break.